Well, church, we are in this powerful series called Encounter. And we are reading through the Gospel of John as we are approaching Easter. And the reason that we chose the Gospel of John is there are so many incredible miracles that happen. And the way John records them and the interactions that Jesus has with people are really amazing. And it leads people to Christ. And so we were intentional about this, and if you've ever read the Gospels, you know that Jesus encounters people differently. Not only does he encounter different people, but along the way, how he encounters them, he does differently. So this series, every week, we're looking at these different encounters. So somewhere along the way, our desire is that you hear Jesus speak to you, because there is an encounter that happens with each and every one of us. And so this morning, I want to share a story with you on how Jesus encounters the worshiper. But before we get there, I want to go back a few weeks. So a few weeks ago, we talked about encountering the grieving. And so in that sermon, we were talking about Jesus going to Mary and Martha upon the death of Lazarus. And anybody that has experienced loss, our intention with that sermon was to make a connection there that Jesus is encountering the grieving. And what happens in that passage is that Martha goes to Jesus, and in that passage we see her faith. And Martha makes a strong statement. She says, "Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died." And that's a true and accurate statement that she's making. She knows that Jesus can heal people. What she doesn't understand is that Jesus can even cure death. And at that point in the story, when it happens, she hasn't seen it yet. But what Martha needs in her grieving is to hear simply truth from Jesus. And so Jesus' response to Martha was that he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die." Do you believe this? Well, Martha believes Jesus and affirms that he is the Son of God. This is all that she needed. She just needed to know that he was the Son of God who provides eternal life. She needed to hear that from Jesus. So Martha has this very powerful, but at the same time very simple faith. She doesn't need a lot. She just needs to be reassured from Jesus. Now Mary, her sister, is a little bit different. When we encounter Mary in that passage, she is mourning heavily. Many Jews have gathered around her to console her, but that's not enough for her. So when Martha tells Mary that Jesus is calling for her, she goes to Jesus because she knows that Jesus can help her in her grief. And like Martha, her statement of if Jesus had been here when Lazarus died, or when Lazarus was sick, he would not have died. It's a testament to her faith as well. She makes the same statement. She believes Jesus could have prevented his death. So when Jesus encounters the grieving Mary, what does he do? He joins her in her grief. He weeps with her. What Mary needs is simply to be comforted by a friend. And we know from the Gospel of John that there is a friendship between Mary, Martha, and Lazarus and Jesus. And so when Jesus weeps, he's demonstrating compassion towards Mary for the loss of her brother. Now, this is the point of this encounter series and why we're using the Gospel of John. We come to know that Jesus is both fully God and fully man through this series. And the reason that's important is because we have a God that we worship who took on this form, who chose to come down and be like us and experience everything we've experienced. So when we pray to Jesus, we're not praying to some stone idol or some wooden carved image or something like that. We're praying to a God who understands what pain is, what loss is. He's experienced that already, so we have this connection with a God who can comfort us. Now, why do I say all of that? Why did I go back a few weeks? You needed to be reminded of Martha and Mary because that's exactly where we're going this morning. So when we encounter the story of the worshiper, we're going to find that we're encountering Martha and Mary again. So Jesus is going to go and return to Martha and Mary. And so we will be in the Gospel of John. We'll be in John 12. And we're going to pick up right in verse 1. And John records, "Therefore, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus was, whom Jesus has raised from the dead. So they made him a dinner there, and Martha was serving, and Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table with him. Mary then took a pound of very expensive perfume of pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who intended to betray him, said, 'Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the proceeds given to poor people?' Now, he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and as he kept the money box, he used to steal from what was put into it. Therefore, Jesus said, 'Leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me.'" Oftentimes, when people read this passage, they think that Mary is the only one that is worshiping Jesus here, right? She pours the perfume on his feet and then wipes his feet with her hair. But she isn't the only one worshiping. Martha is worshiping too. In fact, she is the one who we encounter first worshiping Jesus. When we think about verse 2, Martha was serving Jesus dinner. Now, this seems like nothing more than just good hospitality. But the reason we read about Lazarus' death, so that you can see Martha is actually worshiping. When we look back at Martha, when she is grieving, all she needs to hear is that Jesus is the Son of God to comfort her. Martha has great faith. It is a simple faith. Whatever Jesus says, she believes. So when we see her serving dinner, it's not mere hospitality. She is worshiping the way that she knows how to, through acts of service. And this leads us to our first point this morning. Worship isn't just about the songs that we sing on a Sunday morning. So how do we define worship? Maybe we need to start from that place. Well, worship is the reverential response of creation to the all-encompassing magnificence of God. In the Old Testament, worship encompassed a variety of activities. Bringing forward an offering to God was an act of worship. Bowing down in the presence of God was an outward display of an inner attitude of reverence before the Creator. The Hebrew verb rum could indicate that a person was lifting up or exalting God with praise. Together, these last two terms provide a rich image of worship, people both bowing down before God and lifting him up in praise and wonder. And the Hebrew verb halal could be used to designate the act of celebrating God. The word hallelujah is derived from the Hebrew meaning praise Yahweh. This praise could involve singing. Worship could also be described as serving God. The ritual life of devotion was emblematic of a whole life given over to God. So quite simply, worship is a heart condition, one that aligns the heart to God so that all we do honors him. That is a life of worship. And so when we're talking about worship and the worshiper, we're going to see that they worship differently in this passage. For Martha, It's something very simple. She just needs to serve. That's her act of worship, is serving. But let's look at how Mary worships Jesus. We saw that in verse 3, Mary took a pound of very expensive perfume of pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Now we know from what Judas says that the perfume was worth 300 denarii. That could be understood as a year's wages. Now think about that for just a second. Just pause there. That here's Mary, and she takes this bottle and pours it over Jesus' feet. A year's wages. That's an incredible act of worship. We can learn two things from how Mary worships here. One is at the core of Mary's worship is love for Jesus. Right? If we're going to worship our God, we should do it from a place of love. Right? This shouldn't just be an obligation like, oh, I'm supposed to worship, but rather, I want to worship because I love him. Mary's gift is extravagant and extremely expensive perfume. Mary took the most precious thing she possessed and spent it all on Jesus. Right, this was a perfume that would have come from India. So this is in the ancient world. This is something that literally would have been shipped. And it cost this incredible amount. But you see, love is not love if it calculates the cost. Love gives its all. Its only regret is that it does not have more to give. Right? When you're worshiping, and if it's an act of love, you give everything. You give your heart to Christ. This is what Mary's doing. But she's doing something else. When Mary worships, she does so with humility. You see, in the ancient world, it was an honor to anoint a person's head. You anoint it with oil. That's what the psalmist says in Psalm 23. But Mary would not look so high as the head of Jesus, so she anoints his feet. The last thing Mary thought of was to bestow an honor upon Jesus. She never would have dreamed she was good enough for that. How Mary spreads the oil on his feet adds to her humility. Mary wiped Jesus' feet with the hair of her head. Think about that. This is the ancient world. Feet are really dirty. Right? People are walking around, they step in things. I don't even have to step in anything when you take my boots off. Nobody wants to be in the room. Right? And here we find Mary with this incredible perfume. And her way of worshiping is to pour that over his feet and then take her hair. And think about the stance. Right? She couldn't do it like this. She would have knelt down beside him, very close. This is an act of intimacy. She loves Jesus so much that she will give whatever she has to say thank you. Why? Because he saved her brother, right? He resurrected Lazarus from the dead. She's like, I'll give whatever I can possibly give because he's worth that and so much more. Now here's the thing. Worshiping Jesus is easy when life is going well. Right? When we think about worshiping, I'm sure everybody in here loves to worship what we call the worship team this morning. A closing song. I heard you all. Right? It's a beautiful song and you were getting into it. It's easy when we feel good. But what about when life is not going well? Do you still worship in those moments? I've shared many times with you how along our journey with Maggie and her numerous health conditions, that we nearly lost her 3 different times, 3 different occasions. There I am, a young husband, and nearly losing my wife, the love of my life. Did I stop worshiping Jesus in there? No. If you want to know the truth, I drew closer. Because he was the one thing I could hold on to, the one constant in a crazy, mixed up world. Well, this morning, I want you to hear from somebody who has, by my own estimation and by what I've observed, continually worshiped Jesus when everything has gone wrong. And so this morning, I want you to hear the story that is an incredible testimony to the power of God and the love that we can have when we worship Jesus. So would you welcome Heather Gunn up to the stage, please? So, before we jump into this, I want to start out with, tell us a little bit about your life with John. So let's go back 1 year ago to April of 2024. What was your life like with John?
Well, we were married for 14 years then, because now it's been 15. We were planning a Mediterranean cruise to Barcelona and Greece, and just 2 weeks of just wonderful vacation, a lot of exciting things coming up. And before, we dated for 6 months, got engaged, we dated for 2 months, got engaged, were engaged for 6 months and got married, and we just knew, he's my person.
He is your person. Now, you guys would go on dates all the time, right? Even when
Yes.
you're married, you still continue to go on dates.
Yeah, we were very intentional with, first putting God in the center of our marriage, in the center of our own lives, and raising Lily to do the same. We were very intentional with still dating in our marriage and making it a priority for the two of us to still be connected in that way.
Yeah, and if any of you follow John and Heather on social media, you would see their dates and whatnot, and it was the kind of thing like, oh, here we go again. Right? They're going out to have coffee samplers, and it would irritate me because I love coffee, and it was like, I didn't get an invite. But beyond that, no. So I joke because it's so important to date, right? Is once you get married, that the relationship doesn't end; it starts, and that has to flourish. And so one of the things that I honestly love about you two, I joke, but I absolutely love, is that you would continue to date one another, and you're madly in love with one another. That is so evident. So let's talk about a particular date, June 27th of 2024. Everything changed in a moment, right?
Yeah. So I don't know about you guys. If I see a phone, a number on my phone that I don't know, I don't answer it. It's a solicitor. If it's important, they'll leave a message. So 6:30 on June 27th, I'm like, who is calling me at 6:30 in the morning? Decline. And then I get a text from a coworker's wife and very good friend, and she's like, oh my goodness, I just spoke to Bill praying. Let me know what I can do for you. And here's me, I'm sorry, what? So then I check the voicemail, and it's the ambulance saying that my husband was in a tragic motorcycle accident. They're taking him to Franciscan. So I call them back, and I'm just frantic at that point. Yeah.
So, John's involved in this accident, and he goes to Franciscan. He is then airlifted to University of Chicago Hospital. Now, I'm going to say this, not only a pastor, but as law enforcement, I saw something that I'm not sure everybody saw that morning, but when they wheeled John out of the emergency room on a stretcher, they stopped, the helicopter crew stopped in front of Heather and allowed them to say goodbye to John. What that signaled to me is they don't think he's even going to survive the flight, right? When you have a helicopter there, they move. They move very, very quickly, and they stopped, and we watched the helicopter take off. We all went up to Chicago, and gosh, it was probably, I want to say about 8 hours before we heard anything.
Probably. I was completely numb. Time that day is just lost on me, so probably.
Yeah, so
it was a long time.
We just sat there, 8 hours without any word at all of what's going on, what's happening, and then you finally find out that John is alive. He's in critical condition. He is in intensive care, and then you start hearing the laundry list of things. What can you share with us? And what were some of the things that was wrong with John?
So just to name a few off the top of my head, because there were many, he had a broken pelvis, a broken femur. He got hit on the left side. It was not his fault. A truck ran a red light, just putting that out there. But yeah, he was hit on the left side. The whole left side of his face was literally peeled back from his skull. His sinuses were damaged. His left eye was damaged. He had a big laceration on the back of his leg that caused a fungal infection that they had to monitor. He had internal bleeding. His spleen was damaged. He had broken ribs. He had broken vertebrae. I'm sure there's more. There's a huge list of just everything that happened with this man. But like Pastor said, we heard later on that the doctors did not expect him to make the helicopter ride, let alone survive the night. Yeah, we did hear that from the doctors that had worked on him.
So there is just all this damage, and coming from the military and the battlefield, I've seen some pretty nasty wounds firsthand. The one in his leg was really critical. The wound was open, and it caused a massive systemic infection, which, quite honestly, for the first 2 weeks, that was, out of all the stuff that was wrong, that was one of the most serious, because we didn't know if they were going to be able to stop the infection. It was that bad, right?
Yeah. His blood pressure was skyrocketing high, or it would dip, and he would kind of, it was just all touch. The first month, I would say, was just not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, in the midst of recovery, there's a blood clot.
Yeah, blood clot traveled from his leg up to his lungs, so then he had to have an IVC filter put in. Had to have his gallbladder out because of it. Led to kidney stone. He's doing great, but still things ahead of us, but he's doing great.
So, because of the severity of his injuries, John is placed in a medically induced coma so they can help control him in this process. So, how long did you go before you really were able to talk to John? Not just speak to him, but have a conversation with John.
Well, that's kind of a tricky question, because when he was at University of Chicago and he started waking up, and he was there for, I think, about maybe a month and a half, he would be waking up. He had traumatic brain injury, and because of that traumatic brain injury, he would be awake but not really aware of what was going on, so you could talk to him but not really have a conversation. And then when he was in the long-term health care facility, that was probably the most difficult and trying time, because I lovingly call that period Toddler John, because he was like trying to grab tubes and he had to be restrained and he had to have mittens on, and we would have some conversations, but again, like, he would be mad that he wasn't at work, and I had to call Steve a couple times, like, hey, can you tell John that he's off today? You know, he's got a few days off, and John would be like, no, and Steve would be like, oh yeah, buddy, take the time off, and he's like, okay. Then he would calm down. So there were conversations, but not really like aware, I guess. That didn't come until he was at Shirley Ryan, about 2 weeks maybe before he came home.
Yeah.
So like mid-October, maybe.
Now, to give you all just a small idea of the significance of the impact itself, John has a concealed carry license. He had a handgun on him. They found the handgun a quarter of a mile away. And so this was a massive, massive impact. And as I started talking with Heather right from the very beginning, I said, miracle number one is John's alive, right? Mm-hmm. It was just, let's just focus on that there's been a miracle already. He survived something he clearly should not have survived. So how long was John in the hospital for?
From the day of the accident until he came home, it was 4 months and 3 days, but who's counting? Yeah.
And how many surgeries / major procedures did he go through in that time frame?
Probably about close to 30. I haven't gone through and like counted them, but yeah, probably about close to 30.
Yeah. Think about that you are watching your spouse struggle just to survive, and you every time there's a little bit of progress, you're like, okay, well, he's stable enough now. Now we don't have to worry about this, but we have to worry about this, and we have to go in and fix this. And it was just, at times it was a daily thing. I remember in the beginning, like, it was like, okay, yesterday we fixed this, so today we're going to have another surgery and fix this. Mm-hmm. And for over 4 months, that was life.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What was your biggest struggle in all of that?
Hands down, not having my husband with me. Going through something like this is,
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know how someone does this without God, but usually if something happens, like, we're going through it together, you know, and I had Lily, and, you know, her and I we were always close, but through this, we just got even closer, and watching her faith through all of this has been amazing and inspiring. But not having my husband there, like, yes, he was physically there, and I was very thankful for that, and I knew all of this was just temporary, and even all this stuff still, like, I know it's just temporary. I have complete faith. He's going to keep healing. He's going to keep getting better. But in that time, not having him with me, not like snuggling with him, or, you know, like, not having him, because he was my person. Like, we didn't go any day without talking to each other. And then here we were, you know, almost 4.5 months of not really even having a conversation. Like, so that was definitely the hardest, like, not having him, like, my John, which he is now, so.
And there was something else that was really frustrating in that time frame, the 51st dates. Can you share that with everyone?
Yes.
The frustration in the healing process?
Yeah, so going back a little bit further, when he was at the long-term health care facility, and he was like Toddler John, like, if anyone knows my husband, like, we have such a good relationship, and he's very gentle towards me. Like, we don't really argue. We'll bicker, but we don't argue. We don't fight. Like, we just work. And he doesn't raise his voice to me. But because of the traumatic brain injury, he would get so frustrated that he had these mittens on or he was restrained, and he would take just me. He'd be like, can you take these off? And like get all frustrated with me, but I can't because the doctors say no. And then the nurse would walk in and he'd be like, hi. And I'm like, really? And everyone's like, oh my gosh, your husband's so sweet. I'm like, is he right now? Is he? But no, I knew it was all just a traumatic brain injury. I knew, like, that's not him. I know you take things out on the people you love most, so I tried not to take it personally. But anyways, but when he was in Shirley Ryan doing rehab, and he was becoming more aware, and we would be able to talk and have conversations, but I would show up, and I visited every single day, and I would show up, and he'd be like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen you in a month, like, where have you been? And I was like, no, babe, I was here yesterday. You know, he's like, no, you weren't. I have missed you. No, you weren't. I said, yes, I have. So we started recording a video every single day, just like the movie 50 First Dates, where it's like, hi, it's October 2nd. Hi, say hi, John. You know, so the next day I would show up, where were you? I haven't seen you in a long time. And I'm like, watch this video. So I showed him the video, and I was like, what does that say up there? He's like, yesterday. I said, see, I was here. You just don't remember because of the brain injury. So thankfully, again, we're out of that now. But that was a trying time, yeah.
So we're going to show you a video, and in that video, you're going to see John at the very beginning. You're going to see some of these interactions with Heather reminding John that she was there, and see the progress, and just give you a very, very small glimpse into what they've gone through. So here's the video.
Relax, okay? You're in the hospital, but you're gonna be okay. Okay? You're gonna be okay. It's the 4th of July. Can you believe that already? It's crazy. Hi. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Just try to relax, okay? Just try to relax. I love you so much. Hi. Can you open up your eyes? It's okay, just try to relax.
Hello. It is Wednesday, September 18th. There's John. There's Lily. And we're here spending time with our handsome man who we love. And I'm going to show you this tomorrow. So if you don't remember we were here, I'm going to be like, look, see? We were here.
Be great.
That would be great. So. Hi, today is Monday, September 30th. There's Lily. And John. We are going, hey, John's going to be doing this thing. And the beautiful view of the lake in Chicago.
Did you all see the love that she has for her husband in that? I mean, through the whole thing, she never stopped saying, I love you, you're going to be okay. One of the things that I knew that we were on the right track happened as they were loading him in the helicopter, standing there with Heather, and she looked at John, and I'm going to keep this very clean. It was not pretty. They had basically wrapped him, so nothing was put together, and they had wrapped him for the flight, and so there's blood and things all over the place. And she just looked at John, and she goes, you're going to fight. You're not giving up on this because I'm in this with you. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. And then later on in the journey, I said something that you've held on to. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. He pulled me aside. He's like, Heather, can I be completely candid with you? And I was like, yeah, always. And he was like, now that we're kind of on the other side of things, he's like, I just want to tell you, he's like, at the beginning, I didn't know if you were kind of delusional and not really quite grasping the whole situation, if you were just completely faith-filled. He's like, and now I can tell it's your faith. I always thought that was kind of funny. And not to brag, like, oh, I'm so faith-filled. No, like, it was completely God. Like, it is not my strength that was getting us through. It's completely God, and that peace that surpasses all understanding. You know, I feel like you hear, oh, peace that surpasses all understanding. It's kind of become a little bit cliche, but I legit had a peace that surpassed all understanding. There is no logical reason I should have been so confident in his recovery and so confident that I knew he was going to be okay. It 100% came from God. That's 0% me at all.
As a pastor, you see people at different points of life, and in the beginning, I was a little concerned, like, does she not understand the severity of this, or is she in shock, or whatnot? But what I came to really deeply understand is Heather's faith, and not only was that evident from, literally the very first moments of this journey, but I will say, once you finally got to see him that first night, after they stabilized John, from that moment on, you have been his biggest cheerleader through this whole process. Yeah. So here's the question. You have this trip to Spain planned that's a dream vacation, and now your life is radically changed, right? Mm-hmm. It's why did you trust God in that moment? I don't know. I chose to. I just did. I've been very fortunate growing up with the parents that I have, the family that I have, my friends, my job. Like, I've been very blessed. Of course, I've had my struggles and stuff, but this was the first time in my life where, like, you don't really have a choice. Like, you're either trusting God and you're putting 100% of your faith in Him, or you're going to completely lose it. And just being raised in a Christian home, knowing the power that God has, and just allowing myself to be wrapped in the arms of Jesus, and just the comfort that He gave myself and Lily and the rest of our family. I guess I just chose to. How much reassurance did God give you through that whole journey? Oh, so much. There's no rational reason for me to have been so confident that from when we got the call to when we heard from the surgeons, I was numb. I was just kind of a zombie. The whole day, I was just literally I was numb. I was praying and stuff, but I knew like everyone that we knew was like praying, and just the village that we have. But once I found out that he's critical but stable, he survived, he's very sick, but we're going to keep working. As soon as I knew that, then just that peace just washed over me, and I was like, all right, what's next? Like, we're going to take it on and we're going to deal with it. And
just kind of had that attitude going forward, like, God, you've got this. And John, he was actually talking to my friend Jessica over there, and he said to her, he was like, God had his hand on me before the truck did. And I was like, well, if that's not the truth, like, dang. Like, God has just had his hand on all of this. And yeah, once I found out that he survived, then I was like, all right, God, we've got this. What's next? We're just going to take it as it comes. And yeah.
Outside of your relationship with God, what else helped you through this journey?
Oh my gosh, all of you. Like, my family, my friends, like, we always knew we had a great village, but when something like this happens, you realize how amazing your people and your support. I mean, we had people praying all over the world. And like that first day, like I said, I was just kind of numb, and I received a Facebook message from a friend who went through something with her husband years ago, and she said, lean into everyone else's prayers when you simply just can't pray. And I was like, that was like such a simple statement, but it was so true. Just all the prayers, all the support, like Steve and Caribbean, our neighbors, our friends, like everyone has just been overwhelmingly generous and amazing. And yeah, like we are, I don't know, so grateful, and words can't even express how much we just appreciate everyone, and just bringing meals. I mean, everything. We have been so blessed through this. Like, yes, it's a tragedy, but so many blessings have come out of it that, I mean, it's God's plan, you know, so it's going to be perfect, even though there's bumps in the roads. But
So I've always believed that as we experience life, we have the opportunity to learn and grow and shape our faith in the good and the bad. And so obviously this is bad, it's a tough situation. What do you think you learned in this process?
Lots of things. But one is just surrounding yourself with believers. Because again, when they can pray for you when you just are numb and you simply can't, or just, you know, you have like a prayer warrior that reaches out to their prayer warrior, and it's just like a spiderweb effect. And we literally had people praying all over the world, like in Puerto Rico, in Germany. I mean, like all over the world, people were praying for my husband to survive. And so yeah, and my sister, she was in Orlando with my niece's volleyball, so it was hard for her not being up here with us when all this was happening. But they had like a half a day where they didn't have to be anywhere, and she was like, you know, you hear people say like pray without ceasing. She's like, Heather, she's like, I spent hours, probably like 6 hours, just praying non-stop. Like, those are the people you want in your life. Like, those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. Like, being with other believers, there's nothing like it. And then also, as far as like your spouse goes, anyone out there that's looking for their spouse, wait for the one God has for you. It is worth it. Yeah, and just relying on people, and yeah, I don't know. There's a lot. But
When you talk about prayer, there is, along the way, there was many texts back and forth between Heather and I, and occasionally she would send me a picture or something, and there's one that has always been special to me, and I want to speak to the parents for a moment. When you raise your children to believe in God, it shapes how they experience life. And even in the midst of tragedy, you can see some beautiful things happen. And so I want to show you a picture of their daughter, Lily. And this was, if I remember right, this was within the first week, I think,
yeah,
wasn't
a few
it?
days, yeah.
And so this is Lily praying over her dad. And if you look really closely, there's no tears. That's not a scared face. That's a face of faith, that she is praying for her dad, and she believes in God. And I still have that on my phone. It's just an incredible testimony, right? Mm-hmm. When you have children who can pray like that in a situation, oh my goodness, that is just absolutely amazing. Well, I want to say this. It takes incredible courage to come up and share a testimony like this in front of everybody. And there is so much more to this story. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours of everything that has happened, but the important thing, and where I want to land today, is you never stopped worshiping Jesus in this. One of the things, and you didn't get to see today, but every time I went up there, you had placed your phone beside John's head and was playing worship songs, just non-stop. And that's what John heard non-stop all the time. And you continually worshiped your God in this process.
Yeah. And Lily and I too, like one of our things that we just like to do is just, she's like, Mom, let's just drive around and listen to music. So we'll just drive around if it's nice out, we have the windows down, and it's just quality time that her and I both enjoy. And during all of this, and even like afterwards, it's like we had a hospital playlist, and we would just put that on, and we would just like blast it, and we would belt it out. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was not so good, but we just worshipped and just throughout all of this. If it was a hard day, if it was an emotional day, well, let's just blast that worship music. You know, if it was a good day, we'll blast that worship music. And one of the songs that we're going to sing is kind of what was probably played the most. I'm going to apologize in advance if I completely lose it during the song and my voice cracks. But the words of the song are very good, like very appropriate for what we were going through. And yeah.
Well, Heather, I want to thank you for being willing to share this story. Can we give Heather a round of applause?
Well, thank you.
So, I want to go back to our passage for a moment because we need to close up the lesson. If you remember, I was saying that worshiping Jesus is a heart condition, right? And Heather even said it in her testimony that she chose to worship. She chose to have faith. It's a heart condition. Well, in that passage that I was reading from John 12, Judas responds to Mary's worshiping. And he says, why was the perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the proceeds given to poor people? And I love how John records his own personal thoughts. John is like, time out on the narrative. I'm going to add a statement in here. And John says, now Judas said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As he kept the money box, he used to steal from what was put into it. You see, Judas worships money, and to him, Mary wasted a great amount of money. For each and every person in this room, when we have a tragedy, when we have a trial in life, where does your heart go to first? Does it go to Jesus? Or does it go to something else? For Mary, it went to Jesus. So let's see how Jesus encounters Mary, how he encounters the worshiper. Jesus said, leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. Jesus, I'm going to make this really quick. Jesus is just making a point in time. What he's saying is there's always going to be poor in the world. He's not saying that. He's not putting the poor aside and shunning them or saying they're not worth saving. He's just making a statement. You're always going to have the poor. Why? Because you're always going to have people like Judas who are filled with greed, who are going to hoard money, who are not going to give, who are not going to be charitable, who are not going to be like so many here in this church that supported John and Heather when they needed help. There's so many that are not going to be like that. And so Jesus, because of that, he's saying, leave her alone, because I'm about ready to leave earth, and she won't have the opportunity to physically worship me, to physically love me, because this time is coming to an end. So leave her alone. But what I want you to hear in all that is that for Mary, to show her heart's devotion to Jesus, it had to be done before he was crucified. This was her chance. His response shows his love for her. He rebuked Jesus, leave her alone. Jesus was protecting and allowing Mary to worship him in the moment that she could. And for both of them, it's an act of love. You see, nothing can separate us from the love of God. He will make a way for you to be loved by him. All you have to do is trust in him and love him in return. So this morning, we're going to close in worship by singing In Jesus' Name. It's a song about prayer, about healing, and about miracles that are all done in Jesus' name. So would you please stand and let's all sing with Heather in her testimony.
What a powerful testimony. Thank you, Heather, for sharing. Absolutely. What a powerful testimony of God's hand, right? God's hand was on you, John, before that truck was. God's hand has never left either of you two. And thank you for sharing that testimony with us to encourage us, because the same is true for each one of us, that God's hand is on us, his protective hand. I think it's easy sometimes to ask the question of why, and I don't think God ignores that question, but sometimes he'll answer that in his own time. And what we need to understand is right now that we just rely on him, that his hand is on us, but also that his hand is supporting us, that his hand is carrying us through, that we can have faith and worship him despite everything, because we know that ultimately he is good and he will turn all things for the good of those who love him. So if you would like to receive a blessing this morning, would you simply hold out your hands like this? You have already received a blessing today by hearing God's work in your midst through Heather and John's life, through their family's life. Be inspired by their faith. Be inspired by the way that they worship God through this tough circumstance. Go this week and worship God in a way that others see the joy that you have, that others see not you, but the power of God working through you. Worship God in a way this week with your lives, whether through song or whether through serving others, whatever it is, by word or deed. Worship God in a way that points other people to the God whom you serve. Take this blessing with you. Hug somebody. Tell them that you love them. And we'll see you next week. Amen.